CBS Young and the Restless spoilers. Kyle had always believed that his persistence, his ability to dig into the shadows and never let go until the truth revealed itself, was a blessing that gave him power over rivals, family conflicts, and business wars. But this time that very persistence was the seed of his downfall, because as he tried desperately to uncover what lay hidden between Claire and Holden, to peel back the layers of secrecy that seemed to tie them together in a web too dark and too complex to be ignored, he did not realize that every step he took forward was also a step closer to danger, a danger so raw and personal that it would leave him broken and bleeding in the middle of the storm, abandoned to fate, and a secret that might swallow him whole if someone did not intervene. Kyle's instincts told him there was something off about Claire's connection to Holden, the way her eyes shifted when his name came up, the tension that rippled across her face when questions about him rose, and the manner in which Holden always seemed to hover nearby as though his presence alone was enough to both shield and endanger her. And so Kyle began his pursuit, trailing them quietly, listening in on hushed conversations, and making it clear to himself that sooner or later the facade would shatter. But what he did not know was that Holden was not blind to his curiosity. Holden felt the eyes watching him, the steps echoing behind him, the silent judgment that hung in the air whenever Kyle was around, and instead of retreating, instead of curbing his behavior, Holden decided to do the one thing that would secure his control: silence Kyle permanently. Claire, caught between fear and guilt, had warned Holden not to take things too far, insisting that Kyle's curiosity was nothing more than his usual obsession with control. But Holden, twisted by his own paranoia, could not risk the chance of exposure, and so he plotted in shadows, rehearsing in his mind the exact moment when he would strike. The plan unfolded one night when Kyle, driven by his own relentless suspicion, followed Claire across town, unaware that Holden was not trailing her but trailing him. Lurking just beyond the flicker of streetlights, his breaths measured, his body tense with the anticipation of violence, Kyle kept his eyes on Claire, believing that her secret meeting was about to unveil itself. But as the rain began to drizzle, as the streets glistened with wet reflections, Holden moved into position, closing the distance silently, clutching a baseball bat like a grim instrument of fate. The crack of impact against the back of Kyle's head was as sudden as thunder, a vicious blow that dropped him instantly to the ground, his body crumpling against the pavement with a sickening thud. Blood flowing freely across the rain-slit concrete, mixing with the water until the red trail blurred into the storm. Holden stood over him for a moment, his chest heaving, his face pale not with regret but with cold satisfaction, and then he moved quickly, wiping away any trace of his presence, dousing the bat in a hidden drain, scattering evidence so carefully that it seemed as though nothing had ever happened. To the world, Kyle had simply vanished into the rain, left broken and voiceless in the silence of the night. Claire, oblivious to the violence that had unfolded only moments before, carried on, never knowing that the man who had sworn to protect her secrets had gone rogue and committed an act that would forever alter the fragile balance of their lives. Kyle's breaths came shallow, ragged, each one a battle against the creeping darkness that threatened to swallow him, his body shivering under the downpour, his mind flickering between consciousness and oblivion, haunted by the thought that he might die alone, and rescued, with the truth he had pursued forever lost. In that desperate moment, the rain seemed almost merciless, washing away traces of blood while at the same time amplifying the image of his vulnerability. His lifeless body sprawled across the unforgiving street like a broken doll abandoned by fate. Holden had fled, certain that he had secured his victory, certain that no one would connect him to the assault. But soap opera fate has a way of twisting against those who believe they are untouchable, and even as Kyle lay dying, forces larger than Holden's plans were already in motion. Because someone was bound to stumble upon the scene, someone was bound to drag Kyle back from the edge of death, and when that happened, the fallout would not just be dangerous, it would be catastrophic. The power of this moment was not just in the brutality of Holden's betrayal but in the silence of Claire's ignorance. Because she had no idea that the man she thought she could control had crossed a line she had never intended, and the collision between her denial, Kyle's suffering, and Holden's deception was a storm brewing in Genoa City, a storm that would not end until every secret was dragged into the light. For now, however, the image was stark and terrifying: Kyle bleeding into the rain, life slipping away with each drop, his strength fading even as his mind screamed against surrender. A man caught between the drive to expose the truth and the cruel hands of fate determined to silence him forever. Holden may have thought himself clever, but the world of the young and the restless thrives on the revelation of secrets, and no crime stays buried for long. Someone will come. Someone will find Kyle. And when that happens, Holden will discover that his worst nightmare has only just begun. Jack had never imagined that the quiet drive home would turn into one of the most harrowing nights of his life. But as his headlights cut through the curtain of rain and reflected off the sheen of wet asphalt, he caught sight of a car that stopped him cold. It was Kyle's, parked awkwardly at the edge of the road, abandoned in a way that screamed of danger. His heart dropped into his stomach, dread curling in his chest before his mind could even process what he was seeing. And when he pulled over and rushed toward the car, the horror became undeniable. There was Kyle, his only son, sprawled out in the storm, his head bloodied, his body weak and lifeless in the shadows of the night. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he fell to his knees, his voice cracking into a sob as he cradled Kyle's body, calling his name with a desperation that could shatter stone. The blood stained his hands, sticky and warm, and Jack's tears mixed with the rain as he lifted his son into his arms, stumbling toward his own car, refusing to let panic or grief paralyze him. He threw Kyle into the back seat, his hands trembling as he gripped the wheel, his knuckles white as he pressed the accelerator and sped toward the hospital, each passing second feeling like it might be the one where he lost his son forever. Inside the sterile walls of Genoa City Memorial, Jack's agony transformed into a fiery rage, and as doctors rushed Kyle away, Jack collapsed into Diane's arms, his body shaking with grief, his voice hoarse as he vowed through clenched teeth that whoever had done this would pay. Diane, pale with terror, held his hand tightly, her eyes locked on the door that separated them from their son, silently begging the universe to give them more time, more chances to hold him. More mornings where he would walk through the Abbott mansion with that boyish grin. They sat together in silence, the hours dragging like an eternity, every beep of the monitors behind closed doors echoing like a countdown to either relief or devastation. Nurses came and went, updating them in fragments, but nothing pierced through Jack's storm of fury and fear. Nothing could stop the thoughts running wild in his head of who could have targeted Kyle so brutally. While the Abbotts prayed for their son's recovery, across town, another storm erupted in secret. Claire, her face pale and trembling, cornered Holden the moment she discovered what he had done. Her voice was sharp with disbelief, her eyes wild with anger as she demanded answers. She had told him not to, begged him not to, and yet he had gone behind her back and nearly killed Kyle. Why, she cried, her fury matched only by her despair. Holden, trying to mask his guilt with bravado, spat out excuses about protecting her, about silencing Kyle before he unraveled everything. But Claire saw through him. The man she thought she could control, the one she thought she could manage, had proven himself a monster willing to cross lines she never wanted crossed. Her hands shook as she pointed at him, telling him he had ruined everything, that this wasn't just about secrets anymore, this was about murder, about blood spilled on the streets of Genoa City. Holden snarled that it had to be done, that Kyle would have destroyed them, but Claire's heart pounded with regret, knowing that his actions had set into motion a chain of consequences that neither of them could stop. Back at the hospital, Jack and Diane never left Kyle's side, holding vigil over his unconscious body, whispering to him, begging him to open his eyes. Every rise and fall of his chest was a fragile miracle, every moment he lingered between life and death a torment that Jack could hardly bear. He sat at Kyle's bedside, gripping his son's hand, whispering promises of justice, swearing that the person responsible would be dragged into the light and destroyed for what they had done. Diane stroked Kyle's hair, praying through her tears, trying to keep her husband's fury from consuming him even as her own grief threatened to break her apart. The Abbotts had been tested before, but this was different. This was primal. This was about blood, legacy, and survival. Jack knew the fight ahead would be merciless, because when his son woke up, and he had to believe that the truth of what had happened would come out. And Jack Abbott would not stop until Holden, and anyone who stood with him, paid the ultimate price.